this information so we can discuss it first and not just adopt what is presented to us, all right? The issues I have, at least in part, and I thank for the map, but it shows, among other things, very clearly the northern part of the county does have a higher density population, so I understand why there are more in that direction. But if you look at the map that you received by email, you will see the whole north interior of the county, Middlesex, Burroughs, Snelling, South Plainfield, North Edison, and to some extent North Woodbridge has nothing in it. Those are heavily populated areas, and there should be something there. Right? That's. Yes.
Woodbridge is not the community center.
I know it's not.
Over on Inman Avenue.
I know it's a little better, but it's a lot better in terms of the other towns. Remember, we got 25 towns, and there's a lot of population in terms of that. A few other pieces in terms of that. I didn't notice the Overage site is Veterans Park Community Center, which is not the municipal complex. For those of you who know the municipal complex, it has the municipal building, it has the library, it has the senior center, it has the port, it has the police station. The Overage, if you want to talk about being familiar with an area, that's familiar with the area and it's more central. I understand that, at least for this election, it's not available. I just found that part out now. But that's not necessarily the case in terms of future elections. And there's other issues with that. Assume this proposal is for this election. If all of the commissioners agree that that does not mean that we will assume or will give preference to these sites for future elections, then I will vote for it. But I need that agreement, because otherwise they say, oh, people have still in the early voting site was, so we should keep it take place. Because I don't think these are the best early voting sites. Some of them may be, but I don't know what. I know some of them aren't, where there's some places that should be better.
Steve would like that.
Well, I'm going to jump in. So two points. For the legislation, much like polling locations, what's the date? April 15th. The commissioners will have to approve polling locations and early voting locations for that subsequent.
Right.
This is not, set in stone.
Right.
I understand that. I understand we're going to have to prove it again. But I do not want the argument to rule the day saying, because we use these early voting sites now, and the voters are familiar with these early voting sites, that they should have a preference over other early voting sites.
And again, working with our local partners, some of them have indicated that for future elections, they would potentially like to change the location. Again, we're coming to them and saying we need a place for 12 days. It's a little hard.
Right, no, I understand. But also,
so they said to us that they will come back to us potentially, not everyone, but potentially with new locations for next year.
but we weren't looking for, we really only asked for the most part, in these towns. Some of the smaller towns or some of the towns that we did not request clerks to look for sites might be better overall convenience for the area of the voters in that area. I mean, perhaps, I'm not saying that's the case. I mean, perhaps South Amboy is more convenient than something than to cover Perth Amboy and part of Sayreville or something. I don't know, but we should not just assume that these are that the best site in these 10 towns are the best site for the county.
I don't think these 10 will be the 10 next year.
I understand that. But do the other commissioners agree that we will not give preference to these sites because we use these sites this time?
I will never say let's go with these sites because we've used them already. Is that what you're saying? Because we
Yes.
just explained that we have to do this every year, correct?
Well, we have to adopt it. We really haven't done it in the past,
Good.
really, except in terms of our other polling sites. Unless there have been changes that have been requested, we've made the changes. We just continued with the sites that we have had. So in this instance, we actually have to physically adopt. Yes.
And Madam Chair, do we not always evaluate new procedures that we put in place to make sure that they've done well? So,
Yeah.
Wait. did the other commissioners agree?
We're going to ask everybody.
Oh, I thought you were, was this, I thought you were voting.
I'm sorry, are you voting on
This
the?
is a poll, this is not a vote. Nobody made a motion.
It's just a poll, to see how the commissioners.
About which?
What you
What I just said,
About
okay.
your comment.
That's fine, okay.
I was
It's in
so
the
didn't
minutes.
go.
And it's in the minutes.
Okay.
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
So, I think every year we should be looking at evaluating these
That's what we're
locations.
Exactly.
As long as the one,
I'm a little on your verbiage of preference, okay? I think we should look at all of these, and we should look at it through our staff and what we should recommend. So that's, I agree with that premise. Those are the words I'm using.
And with the experience.
We know how you feel.
yes.
You want me to rephrase it? I already made my statement, right? Yes. Okay.
Commissioner McDonald?
If I understand the statement correctly, it's for us to waive any future arguments that we may have that support locking these 10 in the future. If that's correct,
Yeah.
I think that it was answered, that these will always be reconsidered at every turn. I can say here that I will never take into consideration, I think it's always the wrong answer, to continue to do things the way you've done them in the past, just because you did it in the past. So if it's acceptable to you, I think my response would be that I can warrant that I will always give an independent analysis to something such as this.
Commissioner, the situation has been that one of the things that we consider for voters, and one of the reasons, for example, we do not change any location from the primary to general election, is because the voters are familiar with the location and we didn't want to do that. I just want to be sure that that's not going to be an argument for each of these 10 locations. I'm not saying that we won't, these may end up being the best locations. Many of them may be, possibly all of them, although I doubt it very much. It's not what I believe in the 10 best locations. But I don't want, I need to know that I'm not going to have, that one of the arguments for keeping these locations will not be that, because some voters voted here already, and they know where it is, and so that's, should give a preference to that. That's, if I make myself clear.
I think I understand.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, my answer remains the same. I will always give an independent analysis.
Commissioner Benjamin?
Okay. This is all new to us, first time, right? I really can't say, you can't write this in stone, like Don said. You don't know what it's gonna bring after the election, and what kind of results you're gonna get, who's gonna go where, how it's gonna work. So, yeah, I think we have to be open to review it next election. So it should not be written in stone, it should be flexible, and just by the data we get back and the responses we get back. That's my opinion.
Now we're- Yes.
So I don't think a motion is made.
It was, wasn't it?
I don't think a motion
Oh,
is
no,
made.
no, okay.
So,
Oh, Rob, you want to make one, you want me to?
okay, I mean, I just want to make sure there's a motion on the
Okay,
table.
Correct.
so I move that we adopt these 10 early voting sites for this election only.
I second.
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Mossel?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Benjamin?
Yes.
Early voting review.
I think we want to go to the polling place location. I'll bring it up, the North Brunswick municipal clerk that requested polling location changes for the upcoming election. Do you want to get on any of them, or?
What's, I'm sorry.
Couldn't you these last months or some of that?
We did, we took a permanent change from Our Lady of Peace into, okay, but now what's happening is the North Brunswick High School is having a transformer rebuilt while the kids are away, which would be the same time as
So this is the other,
Yes.
other,
So we-
what we looked at.
yes, so we can't get in there. So she has to make, so she had to put this request in for these districts to move. These two districts were currently in the high school, but they're gonna have to move out of the high school, from the primary, at least. So they're gonna have to move out of the high school, and that's why, but she's splitting them because it'll be easier to do it that way.
We've got 5 districts listed here, which could be.
And
7,
11, she
13,
said, is
11,
permanent
25,
change.
27.
Dave, the paper, the separate paper.
Oh. Okay. 7:13 to go to Federal Elementary School. Okay. All right, I'm sorry, I didn't see all this extra stuff, because I hadn't talked to her in like a few weeks now. So yes, this 27 would be a permanent move to the middle school. We did that last week, or last month, I think we voted on that one last month, and she just did a total overview of what she needed for the general election. So I believe 11, trying to remember now off the top of my head if we did it. Oh, 11 was moved originally to the high school. It was one of the districts that were in, but now again, because of the North Brunswick High School being closed. So that's where you're gonna get, the 7 and the 11 are coming out of the North Brunswick High School. So one is going into Judd, and the other one is going into the middle school. The 27 that we voted, that's where it says District 27 permanently moved to the middle school. I believe we did that one last month, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to go over my notes again.
So Steve, if you sign it for the commissioner, please change this, we're asking them to.
Okay. Well, where she says where it's general, only, let's do that one first. So districts 7 and 13, she wants in Judd Elementary School. So if we can do that one first.
You have her in parentheses, you have her only for the general election. Is this only for the general?
Yes.
Will
Continue.
7 and 13 continue to go back to the high school?
Yes.
So just for this general election, 7 and 13?
Well, 7 and 11 will go back to the high school. She's splitting them.
But see, in this note here,
Right.
on the second notation, you have 11 will remain permanently at the middle school.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, I don't have any of these notes.
Okay.
Because they were in an email, and I forwarded the email to Tom and then moved it on, so I don't have any of this
So
stuff.
is this what the clerk is requesting? Okay, so we would vote on 7 and 13 only for this general election,
Yes.
and 7 and 13 will move back to the elementary school after this election.
It'll go back to the high school.
It'll go back to wherever it was before
Yes.
this,
Okay.
before this
Yes.
election.
Yeah.
7 and 13 will go back to
Okay.
wherever it was before this election.
Okay.
And you approve the sites even with the extra people coming in, they
Yes.
will work still. You've
Yes.
seen everything.
Everything
She always
was
goes out and checks all the
Yes.
sites.
So everything was fully inspected, and the chairs were notified. I made sure she told me as definite before she sent me anything that she reached out to the chairs. So those aspects are 100%.
Any other Republican?
So moved.
Second?
Oh, the Democrats, Republicans.
You have a second?
Second.
Chairs, I mean, Republicans,
Yes.
Democrats.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Cast?
Yes.
Commissioner Moskowitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Darrow?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Yes. Moving on to the administrative reports. Start with you, Steve.
All my people at the warehouse, except myself, unfortunately finished the tech training. I had to go out and do, I think at the time we did it was down in Brookdale, we actually had something else going on at the same time. time, so I had to leave training. So they're all certified techs, they will get their little certifications eventually. We are also working on, we did just receive 184 brand new voting machines today. They're in the back of the warehouse. We have to do acceptance testing and a bunch of different things to get them up and running. And we are also working on currently upgrading the firmware in all the voting machines as we speak. That's what my people are doing right now. So with that, that just started today.
Steve, were those 184, doesn't make a difference whether they're dedicated, but you have 100, how many machines are you going to dedicate for early voting, I guess is my question.
60 is the plan. There's 10 sites, 6 machines per site.
Okay.
When you get a chance, maybe you could pass by.
But the 184 from the state is to kind of anticipate what we might need potentially for presidential elections for early voting.
Right, yeah, okay.
So instead of just buying 60 right now, they said this is what you might need for early voting for presidential. We're giving it to you now so you don't have to go back in 3 years and
And just to make sure, those 184 were funded through what source?
The state.
through the state.
Not through the county, through the state money. Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Hi, congratulations to the new commissioners again. If I could just continue the introductions, I'm Linda Palugi, I'm the chief clerk. I have with me my first deputy, Sharonda McFarland, and Kathy Goddard is the second. And some of your staff members are here, whoever could attend. You have a lot more than this, though. And I didn't put too much of a report together. I just wanted to put the statistics of how many records we have to process. The staff is working on motor vehicle, registration forms, preparing for the primary. We've made a lot of changes in the office. We're rearranging stuff because we're getting a delivery tomorrow of the e-books. I believe like 12 pallets are coming, so we're kind of working on trying to, we don't have a lot of room. So when you guys come to the office, you'll see we don't have a lot of room. I did put together the dates for the separate paper is the post registration, showing you October 12th is the last day to register. And then just some in the review for the provisionals, the mail-in ballot, the hearing, and the cure letter dates that are important moving forward. And that's all I had. Congratulations again.
Maybe we want to clarify, especially for the new commissioners, the dates where the hearings that would need the commissioners to be present.
Yeah, where it says hearing, the public has the right to come in and review mail-in ballots and provisional ballots before we take the certification and affirmation statements off of them. So there's certain dates that we have set up for them to come in and look at them. And then if they're challenging anything, then we have that at a hearing in front of the commissioners, where they state their case, why they're challenging it. So where it says hearing, election day is always a hearing on election day. And then after that, you have the post-election hearing, which is listed there, and then
November
the provisional
5th,
ballot
excuse
hearing.
me, November 5th at 4 p.m.
Yes, post, and then the provisional ballot hearing, which is separate, is 11/9. So as you know, mail-in ballots are accepted 6 days after the election, so we have to wait till that's post-election that comes in. And then the cure, if the signature doesn't match, and we determine it doesn't match, they get a letter where they can cure their signature. And that's the deadline to receive that is November 13. Anything that comes in after that. Okay? You're welcome. You're welcome.
just a couple of quick items. So as our existing commissioners know, during 2020, when we had staff and seasonal and a lot of people working, we actually split into 2 locations. So we had some people at the main location in East Brunswick, and then we had another team here at the college processing mail ballots, for registrations, and all sorts of duties. So we kind of wind down that operation and brought our facilities back to the main office. So everyone's under one roof for this election. But we'll be doing tabulation and challenger hearings and commissioner hearings here at the college for this election. But all staff will be there in the office processing mail ballots and registrations. The county commissioners will.
You say, it says challenger appointments, you mean all of these hearings will be here.
The hearings, the actual physical challenge, we'll bring the ballots here. It's just
Yeah,
easier.
no, because you listed it, you said the word appointments, you mean challenger, hearings.
The physical people come in and look at the ballots, and then also the hearings for reading ballots.
Okay.
And the tabulation will be done here as well. And And then the county commissioners will approve tonight the resolution for the purchase of mail and ballot equipment. We'll put in a purchase order tomorrow, and then delivery of that machine will occur before this election close. So for your commissioners, a lot of what we do in terms of processing mail and ballot has been manual in the past. So we, over the last couple of cycles, attempted to automate some of the functions of that. So this technology, software, and machine that we're purchasing will help us process the same amount of mail and ballots with less amount of staff dedicated to that purpose. So that we can kind of do all the new functions such as drop boxes, drill letters, early voting, whatnot. It's something we're looking forward to, and that will be in place before the election. And then finally, Steve when they hit on is that you're starting the delivery of the electronic poll books from the SNS. The first batch is for us for training purposes, as well as kind of develop poll worker training and kind of go through and kind of see the settings and everything that we kind of want to play with before the November election. And then the main one will be delivered prior to September 10th, so they'll hold poll books at the main office at some point the second week of
Who was choosing the for your voting, the staff or the recording?
Well, we would, the suggestion would be to work through the county chairs as well as the local chairs to identify people for the main voting sites. And again, you might have poll workers who hear about it, you might express interest, so we'll forward that, we'll upstream that information to the county chairs and local chairs.
How many people are we looking to, are we gonna talk about that after your report?
Yeah, we can go back to early voting and kind of review that.
Okay, because we need to know the numbers, and I'd like to know how many poll books we're gonna have on each site, because that may, because we have to deal with, as we talked about, we have to deal with challengers and the rest of them.
Transition to early voting discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner, if you want to stay on for.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So for early voting, I sent you kind of a draft guidelines of, from the state in terms of discussions that they've been having with our association, the NJAO, election officials, in terms of trying to come up with guidelines for early voting. So they've done some really good work, but as Commissioner Katz might highlight, there are areas where the legislation was maybe silent on early voting, and so the existing legislation regarding election day will kind of take precedence. So that creates some areas where you might have to have a discussion. So where we are, thank you for approving the early voting sites. So the next transition would be for poll workers. So we have been working on a couple of factors. One, we're going to be putting together a poll worker letter to send out to all the poll workers to notify them that there will be mandatory training to cover the electronic poll books, as well as the new provisional ballot process that we'll be having for this election. And then noticing in terms of where that training will occur. So previously we had done the training here in Middlesex County College. That space is unavailable for all the times that we need for poll worker training. So we're going to be doing in two locations, one at the Eldridge in New Brunswick, and then also at our office in New Brunswick. So we're using a conference room. And again, obviously our commissioner knows it's a limited space, so we'll be doing two classes capped at 10 people and a couple of classes on the weekends as well. But most of the training will take place at the Eldridge in New Brunswick. One of the things that came up in the last election was scheduling the poll workers. Again, that was a challenge, a new thing. So for our commissioners before, we would just send a letter out to all the poll workers and just say, we're going to have training at the Edison High School, South Plainfield High School, Bowtech and so on. These are the dates, you come, you just have to fill up the auditorium, and that was it. Presented two issues. One, the information wasn't really getting to the poll workers, and two, in this current environment, they weren't able to do that. So we've done smaller class sizes the last couple election cycles, and so it is kind of more hands-on, a little bit more small, intimate setting. I think it benefits the poll workers in terms of training. So that's it. And scheduling became an issue. So the county IT has been very helpful in terms of coming up with a scheduling app can now schedule themselves for the training instead of us calling them and trying to schedule them for training classes. So that's something that hopefully will create an efficiency for our staff who, you know, previously had to make, I'm looking to read up hundreds of numerous calls over election cycle. And again, I was talking about
I'm assuming we'll strongly direct them to the app to schedule themselves, but there'll be an option in terms of calls and things for people.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked internally that there are going to be people that just are not going to be able to use that, but even if it increases the
I
amount
got
of
it.
qualified.
I just want to make sure that we're, otherwise.
So again, as you were talking about recruitment of poll workers, we're going to try to work through the county chairs as well as the local chairs to identify, and again, we're thinking, Commissioner Cass, to your question, in terms of number of poll votes per location, we're talking about 3, and then how many machines, like 5 to 6 per district?
For early voting?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 machines, 3 poll books.
So, you know, about 9 poll workers. So we would say probably 16, so we could cover breaks and cleaning, kind of. 16 per location. Well, I mean, so again, that's why we want to expand it to, you know, not put the onus on local parties of that particular location, but the party apparatus is kind of asked for poll workers. And again, it won't be 160 because not everyone will be able to work 9 days in a row, so you're going to need some overlap.
Perhaps when we send out the letters to the poll clerks to schedule their training, we also ask them if they're also interested in working part or all of the early voting days in sites.
Yeah.
So that we have a pool of people that are interested in doing that.
Yeah, that's part of the app as well, as you can choose dates. So if you are interested in early voting, you know, scheduling yourself for early voting, you can do that through the app, and then we can refer that back up.
Because I thought the app was for scheduling the training.
Yes, but again, the nice thing is we're able to create reports and share that with the chairs and poll worker coordinators of who's taking the training, who's expressed interest in terms of.
But there'll be a spot there also for expressing an interest that they want to work.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
With the early voting, and you're having so many poll workers there, let's say I coordinate for my town, so I have my list of my poll workers for my districts, that's fine. But if somebody wants to work one of these early votings, let's say in Woodbridge, how many will you take? You know, like, I don't know if you're gonna be full. As many as I can give you, right?
Absolutely.
I would say I want your best and your brightest, and as many as you can give us so that we can really service.
We're talking about 16 poll clerks times 10.
60?
We're talking
Now,
about
look, now,
Nine.
what is
Are we 9 days?
It's
9 days, yes, sir.
16 poll clerks, 9 days.
Yes, sir.
Some of them want to work multiple days. If they don't, we're still talking about 150.
I mean, but they could, let's say you get somebody that only wants to work one day, you'll take them, right? Okay, that's what
Why not?
you know, or you
Absolutely.
can do it multiple days.
Yes,
That's what I want to offer my
yes.
people.
Because then
They
hopefully
can
those
work-
same people want it, they've already been trained, and hopefully they come back for
Correct.
election day as well, which we would love, because they've already been trained and they already started working with the
Oh, that's
poll books.
right, you're right, that they
So,
could do that
yes.
and do
So
it.
it's 2 birds, 1 stone.
And crying
Make it really
sometimes
good.
helps too, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, the pay last time really helped.
Yes.
They will be trained,
We
they will be
decided
trained
what the pay would be for the early voting poll workers versus election
They'll be
day.
active or whatever they need.
Pay is set, so anyway, early voting poll workers would receive the same amount per hour as they would for election day. There is it's a $30 bonus, a one-time bonus for taking training for early voting to those early, so if someone is an early voting poll worker, they receive an additional $30 to take training for their early voting class. And again, you know, obviously, we would love if the pay was increased by the state, but hopefully in the future that will take place. But the poll worker pay, unless changed by the governor or legislature, will go back to what it was prior to.
In fact, it's smaller
Look,
amount.
it's $14.29 an hour for early voting.
How much?
$14.29.
And how
Rita
many
keeps
hou-
reminding
and
me.
the hours that we're operating early voting would be consistent for the 9 days?
It would be from 10 to 8 Monday through Saturday, and then 10 to 6 on Sunday.
Yeah. Are we paying them at least a half an hour prep time on either end?
Yeah, I'd say like 12 hours total.
It would be so we would be paying them from 9 to 9
Yeah.
for the Monday through Saturday, and then also 9 to 7 for Sunday. And then transitioning, so the poll books we've already kind of discussed, they're coming in. ES&S will be here next Wednesday, kind of, in terms of implementation, kind of help us kind of, in terms of a temporary space, because we like to set up a more permanent space, so we kind of house the machines more permanently. At least get us through this election in terms of, housing them and setting them up in storage, and working with us in terms of the different alerts and things we want to put on the poll books in terms of notifications for the poll. Voting machines, Steve talked about in terms of the firmware and the extra machines we're getting for voting.
ESNS is coming in on the 8th to,
We've already had numerous meetings with them regarding the poll book,
Right.
internally, the staff and teams, but they're coming in just to kind of look at our space, and then they'll also be doing trainer days in terms of going over with our staff how to operate the electronic poll book, so that will be in the offering as well. And then, again, thank you to Steve and Maria will be purchasing ancillary supplies for this election, in terms of cartage bags, additional things that will be very specific to early voting. We're going to need extension cords, power strips, styluses for the poll book for people to sign their names. So all these ancillary things we're in the process of ordering now. We've gone over kind of with the clerks, but we'll kind of fine tune is the security and chain of custody procedures for early voting locations. We kind of talked with Steve that board staff will be at each of these locations at the beginning of the day and the end of the day to kind of set up and then close, help close down in terms of the ballot transfer, in terms of the cards and machines back to the board elections. So in terms of chain of custody, the only things that are coming back at the end of the night were the ballot cards that are in the back of the machine, voting machine, as well as provisional ballots that are filled out each day at each location. Everything else will remain on site, and the Board of Elections is purchasing cages on wheels that we would secure the electronic poll books and the election materials, anything that's remaining on site. And then we're also having conversations with the clerks about actual cameras and actual security or police officers monitoring the location when we're not on site at each of the locations. Challengers, Commissioner Katz had highlighted, and again, one of the concerns, the things that we're still trying to address with the state, the guidelines that I kind of gave you are draft, are not finalized, they're kind of really, and even since then there have been some changes, but one of the issues is that challengers was not addressed in the early voting law, so practically speaking, for these 10 early voting sites, the challenge would be is that if it's a county early voting location, anyone on the ballot in Middlesex County from any town could be, as a challenger, could be at that location, as well as any of their designees or then their county challengers as well. So that presents a challenge in terms of whether or not you do have a contested election in a town early voting location. How do we properly manage challengers while also not denying anyone their ability to observe the election process? So that's an unresolved issue. Commissioner Katz highlighted, and again, I agree, but we're still waiting. If there is a resolution from the state, or how are we supposed to address that on when early voting? I don't know if you want to know that.
I have, I'm assuming everybody knows what the current rules are, which is just for the concept of an election in one day. Every candidate can appoint 2 challengers per election district, one of which can be in a poll at one time. It's for each election district that they're on the ballot. They're on the ballot everywhere. My thought, and this is just, it's not a stream of consciousness, but it's just a thought in terms of possibilities. In terms of local races or local candidates, one possibility is having each local campaign able to appoint the same number of people they would for individual election districts to any one early voting site that they choose. Because they may feel that, for example, obviously in Monroe, the likelihood is that most Monroe voters who are going to vote early will vote at the Monroe site. For Jamesburg, it's also likely that the case. If they choose that, they can make they would allow them to make their, two challengers per site, and that will be that site. So that could limit it somewhat for that part. I'm assuming we could probably do something similar for the legislative candidates, in that let the legislative candidates appoint their 2 challengers in every polling location, every early voting location that's in their legislative district. County candidates, they're all over. I would have, say, you can appoint wherever they want, whatever, all 10 districts, unfortunately. And of course, the county parties have a right to appoint in Middlesex 27 candidates that are at large. So that's the best that I can think of at the moment. Still, of course, you could have local campaigns that say, it's a hot race, I want to appoint people in multiple polling locations, even though there's only one in or near my town. But if we sort of make the determination early and advise these people early, we have a better chance of that sticking.
How clear are those people to whom you are referring about what can be done as a challenger? That's a bigger issue that should be very clear. In other words, if you have 10 people, one for each candidate, that may be great, but they can't go near the books, they can't pick up the voting list of names, et cetera, and I want you to make sure that everybody
Well, there's no change on the rules on that. The challengers don't get any additional power or any less power because there's early voting. The question, for our purposes, is how many and who we allow. I agree. I mean, whatever the challenge, the challengers' rules in terms of do's and don'ts does not change, and I don't think there's any implication that they should be different. Anybody have any other ideas? I'll refer back to the chair.
Challengers to come to the count during the day? Again,
So for early voting at the end of so again, per the legislation, we're to generate a report of who voted early voting on each particular day that we then make. That would be
So the parties and the campaigns can know at the end of the day who voted in their jurisdiction.
And so that report would be available. There's no requirement for a 2-hour start at early voting. And again, for the commissioners, we wouldn't count the early voting ballots for the results on the 6th until election night.
Correct.
So
But you'll let us know, you'll let the town know who voted early. We'll get a list.
That report will be available, so through the commissioners, through the chairs, if you wanted to make a request for said report, our staff would be able to provide that, on a daily basis in terms of
Would it be better if it would be one blanket one for each party, or you want each town to do it, or how would it best work administratively?
I'll defer to Linda.
I'm sorry, it's possible the county clerk can post it to the website like they do with the mail-in ballots?
That would be
So-
the names. You don't want the names of the people that are voting on the website.
It's a list of who voted.
But that's public. That's any voter can go online and see if somebody voted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they do now.
No, they can't.
The county clerk posts it to the website who voted.
For mail-in.
Yes, for mail-in ballots. So the county
Not
clerk,
how they voted, just that they did.
the county clerk is responsible for sending out, we're responsible for coming back. We made an agreement a couple of years ago that they would post the list for both departments.
Well, we've seen them. I know we post the number of people that have voted. I haven't seen names of actual voters on the website.
I believe it is. Yeah.
I've looked at the website a number of times, I didn't see any place where I could click and see all the people voting.
Yeah, she's not here. We can check.
But if it is, and.
Because they first started with us providing the list, and they decided to do the list, so I don't know, actually, I've never been on the website, so I don't know where it is. But it's
I'm not aware
possible.
of it. If it is, we should let us know about it, so we can give the parties.
Yeah, because they would call in, Loretta does the public service reports, and we would tell them, well, you can see the website, which is updated daily, instead of us having to generate a whole list.
Okay, if you can get the
I will
specific details.
find out.
Because if we can provide that to the parties and we don't, and so.
It'll save time,
So
yeah.
administratively, the board or the clerk's office doesn't have to send it out.
Right.
And it's there, and they can look at it and download it themselves.
Right.
That's fine.
It's
But we
supposed
have
to be in
make sure
Excel
it's clear
format.
that they have it.
Hold on.
Because I'm not aware of it being, I'm not aware of that, the names being there.
Oh, yeah.
So again, just to, picking up on the discussion would be, where we're going to be working with our clerks in terms of communication with the county, marketing, and communications, kind of outline the social media plan as well as advertising that we'll be doing for early voting in ways in which educate the public. We're going to share that with our local partners to the best extent possible, and any information we get from the state, we're going to share with the municipal clerks so they can have that on their websites and social media accounts. As part of the challenge will be that voters are, through this first time of early voting, may not be as aware of it the first time through. But the availability of early voting, and then also the fact that we'll be having early voting machines and electronic voting. Although through the last election, the voting machine, in terms of use by voters, was not an issue. It seemed that most people were able to adapt pretty fairly well to the new technology. And I think the poll book will have the same effect. It will cut out any poll worker issues. Well, I say that, but don't get me wrong. But it will curb any issues with poll workers in terms of errors. And I think the voters will like it as well. And so it will be, instead of looking at a book with like 10 names and blank information in it, it'll be their information, it'll be their signature, and all their information. And so I think that will be something to look forward to. And then lastly, in terms of, like I said before, election day, election night, so early voting is on Sunday. We have to clear out those locations and machines and USB sticks, and then they won't be tabulated until election night. So again, our staff will collect the sticks from machines, bring it back to the board, and then we will have that at the county clerk's office at 8 o'clock on election night, so that they can then upload that information. So hopefully on election night at 8 p.m. we'll have the early voting results kind of populated on the results ticker that we'll have.
Commissioner Conick.
Well, we have to decide something on what we want to do with challengers. Because if we can't wait, people have to submit names, and there's a certain period of time before the election. But I'm assuming at some point they're going to have to submit names some time prior to the early voting time. We have to decide either when that is or let them do it up to that date if we wanted to.
The way we left Paul with the state, we had a state call on Tuesday.
Yesterday.
With the state, and we kind of went over that. And the way they kind of left it with us, because it was asked, I asked it, was that we should contact our deputy AG and ask them how we were to interpret the challenger law. So, I don't know if that's the tack you want me to take. I think
Well, my understanding is they don't really know, because there's no statute that says it. So
Exactly.
if they're going to tell us, if they're going to say, do what you want, we have to decide what we want. And if we don't do it now, our next meeting is probably too late. If we, my concept is, whatever we decide, we publicize it, publicize the hell out of it and get it to everybody so they know what the rules we're proposing. Nobody's got a surprise, and they're more likely to accept it. If we wait until the last minute and they're surprised, then we're more likely to have objections, et cetera, et cetera.
I leave it to the commissioners how to move on the board on the to to the AG for review, is that a you want to take, or do you want to kind of decide?
I'm not wedded to what I suggested, that's just an it's one option.
It just sounds that you're providing the opportunity for 30 people, right, to be challengers.
Well, you have to allow, if you have a local campaign, you have to allow a local campaign to have a challenger in a site where people from that town are voting.
This is all brand new, the new early voting things, it's all new. The bigger issue, in my opinion, is dealing with vote by mail and people not understanding the rules by that, going to the voting booth, trying to vote in that booth, even though they really registered to vote by mail, and then that kind of stuff. So I'm not quite as concerned as you, and I would rather limit those numbers because of the new vision that we're going to be having.
Yeah, Tom, is there a concern at all in that call with regard to consistency across the state? Has that been mentioned at all?
Consistent, well, I mean, I think our colleagues across the state would love consistency across many of these issues, but I think the rub is that in the absence of any language within the early voting law, you know, existing law kind of takes precedence, and so that's kind of the rub, is that I think they kind of know that it should be addressed, but I don't know if they've arrived at a legal conclusion of how they can address it.
And when was the anticipated conversation with the Attorney General's office? Is there a timeline on that?
Those have been ongoing. I mean, those are, in terms of the FAQs that they kind of did go over and try to resolve, the AG's office has been involved in those discussions with the division of elections. So.
My opinion is I do agree that time is certainly of the essence, but I certainly wouldn't be prepared to make a decision on that without first hearing, you know, what the AG potentially has to offer in that regard.
So maybe the compromise should be is that if Tom can work with Commissioner Katz to come up with something that outline which makes sense to all of us, let's pass it by the Deputy AG's office. Let's just pass it by and see what input they may have. Everything it says, if they say to us it's your decision, then we can also circulate that through an email, and then we can all vote on it through an email that we agree that we can move forward.
I mean, if the AG...
I just would like some input by the deputy. I would like some input,
Absolutely.
you know.
If the AG or the Division of Elections comes up with, this is what they recommend that we do for everybody in the state, that's fine, but they gotta do it soon.
But we don't think it's gonna, we all
Don't
probably
think it's
agree it's
gonna
gonna happen. So why don't we be, as you're saying, let's be proactive. Let's the two of you work on it, work on some language, send it up to the DAG, or the AG, whoever looks at it. If they make no comments on it, then we'll have to make our decisions to move forward, and then we can pass it around to everybody. Everybody looked at it, any other inputs, and then we can vote on an email basis.
I mean, as I said, I'm not invested in what I said, but does that make sense as at least a proposal?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I think so.
Any further comments from commissioners? Hearing none, public comment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Charles Strattonville from New Brunswick, and the editor of New Brunswick Today, community newspaper, available online at newbrunswicktoday.com. Start by congratulating both of the new members and wish you all the best, and thank you for your service. We'll, come up to you after the meeting and I invite you to do a quick interview on your way out if you're able to. I do want to, encourage the board to post the recordings of the meetings on the web. I see minutes are posted, but only through May. So it can be hard for folks who don't attend every meeting like I try to follow what's going on. But I know it was said long ago that would happen, that those recordings would be posted. I think that would be a smart
Charlie,
thing.
I don't believe we said that the recordings would be posted unless
The Commissioner Katz, the board only committed to the minutes and the agenda.
Okay, I thought Mr. Lynch was kind of saying like that was going to happen, but at any rate, it would save me an over request and save the staff the time of putting it on a flash drive and me driving to your office and picking it up, but do what you will. I have to ask about New Brunswick. Can you tell me how many locations are on for the general election day? Is it back to 12, or?
I don't have I don't have the polling location numbers from the moment, but I can follow up close. I don't have the election day polling location.
Okay, I'll follow up for that. I am hoping to leave with a list of the early voting locations. Can somebody give me that before we part ways today?
I can email you a list of their ones.
Okay. Are we fortunate enough in New Brunswick to have one?
Yes.
Want to follow up about the issue of the folks who voted by mail but got the wrong party ballot. Last I checked, there were 29 of those folks. Can anybody confirm, if there's been others identified since then? And either way, what's the status on making sure that doesn't happen again?
That number 29 was reflected after the election hasn't changed.
And
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say.
The number 29 of those ballots that were rejected in the 2020 primary because for new commissioners. So if a Republican voter either received a Democratic ballot or if someone in the other house, if someone within the household had a Democratic ballot and they sent that to us, we would reject that. So there were 29 instances of that during the primary election.
And is there a reason to think that
The county clerk sends out the ballots, not.
Understood. But is there any reason to think that the county clerk sent the wrong ballots and that's why we're getting back the wrong ballots?
I think we have the way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Some of the challenge would be is that we tear the certs before we open the ballots and take them out, so we're not able to link the voter and then go back to the county clerk and then the vendor and kind of disseminate, where the issue lies. So it is kind of unfortunate we're not able to provide a list of voters that are impacted. That's part of
Too
the
late.
process of maintaining privacy of voters. So it's
Understood. Did I hear that the county clerk was here but left?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's unfortunate because a lot of it's a common theme that, her office is making mistakes and they haven't really been given proper answers for those mistakes. So I am finally getting some responses to my questions to her office. They're coming through the county PR people, and they raise new questions. So for instance, in one case, somebody reached out to me and said, my district, we all got the wrong sample ballot. Somebody in East Brunswick was getting Edison sample ballot. Well, when I raised the issue, finally, pressed Clerk Pinkin for many weeks and months to get answers, and finally they say, oh yeah, we didn't realize that, but now that you brought it to our attention, we identified an issue with the printing and mailing of the sample ballots, which was something none of us knew about until somebody reached out to me. And so it's super concerning that had I not gotten this information, had I not pushed for answers, that this same problem could be repeating itself. Now they say, we're doing stuff to make sure it doesn't happen again, but I think the county clerk owes us answers, and the least she could do could be to attend a full meeting of the board and when issues come up, address those issues, or at least send someone from her office. My understanding, no one here is from the county clerk's office. So I think that's one easy thing that the new members could do to help reform things would be to get the county clerk to start coming through. I understand ESNS is coming to town again. Can somebody, maybe Mr. Lynch, make arrangements for me to be able to speak to somebody there to get some of my questions answered? As I mentioned, I've had some difficulty getting responses from them.
if you want to submit questions to me to ESNS, I can see if the ESNS will.
Well, I'll pass the questions through you, Mr. Lynch. Do want to just say for the record, I'm serious concerned about how they've handled their work here so far. That said, I know that the people at the Board of Elections do important work, including all of you, and it's a very tough job, and sometimes the state statutes don't make sense, and sometimes political parties don't make sense, and their decisions don't make sense, but you all have to make it happen. What's that? Oh, right, okay, well, thanks. I'll see you after the meeting. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Roll call.
Yes.